Guys, all right. You ever seen the Loch Ness Monster? No, you haven't seen it. Maybe you have. But if you had seen it, it would have come up from the deep. I actually was once saw that lake. And it's a dark lake. And it makes you think of things coming up. Today on the podcast, I can't stop thinking of things that are bubbling up in culture. They're coming up. And one of the things that's coming up is a constant conversation about what it means to be purposeful, to have meaning in life, to be something like alive. Why are we alive? And I find the artists are the best. This artist got bubbled up. And in all of his writing, Joe Pug found himself suddenly realizing that he'd always been writing about something like God, Christ, Catholicism, something like that. And today we talk about it. Today we talk about his Loch Ness Monster, the thing that came up out of his life and into his artistry. Joe Pug, world-class artist, by the way. Been writing songs and really the executioner of one of the best podcasts out there called the Working Songwriter. This is Heavy Things Lightly. I talk with Joe Pug. All right, Joe Pug. I think we count each other as friends now. We started to do this thing where we met a couple of years at a little fundraiser in Wisconsin. And I kind of fell in love with some of your music, and then, with your music, and then we finally made it happen where we can talk to each other. Thanks for coming on.
I think anyone that you've had a cigar with in the Wisconsin -4-degree weather can instantly count as a friend. So that gets us in.
Do you know, this is not a joke, since I saw you, I got pneumonia.
It was probably from that night. And we only finished half the cigar that night because we were both so cold.
Do you remember? So I want people to hear this. I know people are like, I hate when people talk about what they did together. Well, here's what happened, okay, on Heavy Things Lightly. We decided we had to have a cigar. And for people who know about cigars, that's special. When you do a cigar, it's different than just sitting in a chair. But we couldn't smoke inside this there's a beautiful house we were in, this beautiful Airbnb. So it was 3 degrees or something, Joe. What was it? It was crazy.
It was really low. Yeah, that is the thing with cigars. Like, part of the whole allure of cigars is the medium of, this is going to take 45 minutes to an hour. You know what I mean? So we're going to talk and hang till these things burn out. So you've kind of committed to that in a certain way. But it was so cold. I think you and I spent about 10 or 15 minutes not wanting to tell the other one that we were so cold.
That's my punchline. Because I was literally trying to smoke a cigar. First of all, I hate the weather. And I'm thinking, I'm going to do this as long as I can do it. And I'm not going to act like I'm not upset. And you were doing the same thing. And eventually you just went, I can't feel my hands.
Yeah. I definitely cried, Uncle. And you didn't complain when I did. So.
Oh, God, you kidding me?
Yeah.
I threw that thing in the snow. I doused it. That was a fun thing. So, Joe, tell us just, I don't know. I have you on a pedestal as a musician because I got to sit next to you as you played on a couple of occasions, like right up on stage. Tell us about maybe why you make music and what and about your podcast. Just tell us about you as a person, as a musician first, and we'll talk about it as a family man. How about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Greenbelt, Maryland. Was always kind of an artsy kid. Got into music early, but also got into theater early, and then went to University of North Carolina to study playwriting, but I dropped out early, and I dropped out very quickly and unexpectedly. It was the night before my senior year of college. I just decided that I wasn't in the right place. I didn't have a spiritual framework for things at that time. I think it was definitely a spiritual crisis at the time, but I had no framework to understand what that was. I just thought it was maybe something psychological. I wasn't in the right place. So I dropped out that night. I drove to Chicago that night, where I had a buddy whose couch I knew I could crash on. And I just started working carpentry in Chicago during the day, and then playing music at night, because I couldn't do theater. I mean, theater, you have to know people, you have to audition. I mean, I could go to open mic nights just with my guitar on like day 2. So I started doing that. And then I built a little bit of an audience in Chicago where I was playing. And then from there, as Providence would allow, a songwriter named Steve Earle heard my music and took me on the road with him, and I quit my job at that time. This is about 15 years ago now. And I've just been, by hook or by crook, making a living as a musician, as a working musician ever since.
And loving it, yeah? I mean, it's
great. It's the best. I can't tell if I love music more or if I like hanging my own shingle more. I really like working for myself, and I really like being an entrepreneur. I think I like both of those things equally.
Yeah. Yeah, as a man trying to make your way in the world and, support your family, I would imagine being an artist can create issues. However, unto itself, right? Being in charge of yourself and being in charge of your art, that's pretty beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out good for me in that my wife and I waited a little bit longer to have kids. I think we were both about 32 when we did. So I got to get in about a decade of the thing that a lot of people have to do at the start of their career, especially if they open their own business, which is, sorry, baby, you're not going to see me for 10 years while I go and make this thing happen. And my wife, who was then my girlfriend at the time, was supportive the whole way. Once we had kids, things definitely had to flip. And sure, obviously the family is the priority now. But that first 10 years was really crucial. Just being able to really never have to say no to different opportunities, as shitty as they might have seemed at the time. I'd always just be like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll be there.
Right. I know this feeling. That's where we are in some ways. Well, that's where we've been with First Things, which is someone's like, come throw a Supra in Amarillo. I'm like, I'll do it. Let's just go do it. And then you start to realize that the things you think you're doing, you're not doing, right? You probably saw it. Like, I thought I was taking a gig to pay for something, but actually what was happening is you were making a friend that led to something like success.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. But you do have to say yes at the start all the time. I saw a really funny interview with Jerry Seinfeld and Alec Baldwin, and Jerry Seinfeld asked him what he was going to do in the next 10 years. And Alec Baldwin says, I just want to sit by a pool with a drink and a telephone, and the telephone rings every 10 minutes and I pick it up and I just go, no, and hand up the phone. So I don't think any of us are at that stage yet, but hopefully we'll all.
Okay. Let's make it a deal. We'll try to, when you get there, or I get there with these tables, then we'll share.
We'll always say yes for each other, but
yes, we'll do something together.
No.
Well, we've got something we'll talk about. Maybe we're trying to put together in Chicago. I have a little update on that. We can talk about it. But then, okay, so you're writing music, and there's Steve Earle, right? Did you say?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's helping to inform, right? Because you're on the road with him, and then there's the other musicians who are informing you. Who would you say is your biggest musical influence, if there is such a thing in your life?
Well, the uninteresting answer would be Bob Dylan. And if anyone were to hear my music, they'd know it to be uninteresting immediately, because Dylan or Woody Guthrie, they really kind of invented the job that I do in the American sense, especially in the popular consciousness. Maybe a little bit more of a deep cut or an interesting answer would be a songwriter named John Prine, who got his start in Chicago, who's known as the singing mailman. He was a mailman. Chris Christopherson discovered him in Chicago. He got a deal with Atlantic, I think, or something like that. And then he's always been a very beloved songwriter in America by a lot of people. But in some ways, he was kind of an underground guy because he started his own record label very early, like in like the 80s, when that was like not a thing that you did.
Right.
He started Oh Boy Records. So he's been a big influence on me artistically, and also in the way that he ran his business from a very early age.
That makes sense. That makes sense in terms of your expression and the way you play. Yeah. Wow. And then what happened recently? So I want to talk about the spiritual angle and all this, but recently you found God, like you became a follower of Christ as a Roman Catholic. Is that true? Do I have that right?
Yeah. I converted to Catholicism. I think I was baptized about 3.5 years ago. Obviously with Catholicism, the catechism takes, longer than most. I don't know if it takes longer than most faiths. It seemed like it took a long time for me, about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, because COVID was going on. I can't really remember. And I think that none of that was really rumbling in my soul before I had kids. And then when I had kids, you start to face down the fact that you are responsible for educating them in everything. And so you get to think, all right, like what's the most fundamental thing I need to teach them? That would be like how to be a good person, how to be a moral person, how to be a virtuous person. And, when I started to dig down on the quote unquote things that I believed, I didn't believe a lot of things back then. I thought that I did, you know what I mean? But I didn't. I believed a lot of things that maybe just helped me be well socialized with the people that were around me that I thought would make me a good or virtuous person. So I started to get pretty freaked out that there seemed to be no underpinnings. There was no foundation to what I was going to teach my kids. And I started to look around and attended a few Catholic masses, and it really touched my heart.
Was there a threshold? Was there a little moment when you went from sort of, I'm not going to be a Catholic, to something like, that could happen? Like, do you remember something like that?
I can remember like the first really, the rub for me at first is as I began to be catechized, I was kind of like of the modern materialist assumption that you could still, as a Christian, basically say, well, Christ was a really great teacher among many other teachers, and he taught, maybe if it's not necessarily true, there's like a larger kind of symbolic angle to it. Obviously, there's symbolic angles to it, but, being a Christian is believing that it happened. And when that was, it's believing that he said he is who he said he was. And when that was explained to me by the priest, Father Charlie, who's in the Vatican now. Shout out to
Oh, really? He was, you're a Baltimore guy, right?
We're
Maryland.
We're Maryland. We're actually Archdiocese of Washington because we're really close to Washington.
But that's where you met this priest that was telling you.
He was in my parish. Yeah. So he explains this to me. And that was the first real rub for me. I said, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to believe that. Or maybe I even said something to him along the lines of like, I will never believe that. I'm a modern person. I believe in science. And, all these different things that I thought were antithetical to this. And it took a long time, but it eventually my heart was worked on in a way where I believe he is who he said he was.
Can I throw an idea at you, and then you wrestle with it as a convert? I find there's converts, we call them in Orthodoxy cradle, someone who was born in and baptized as a young baby. You guys say that, yeah. And then there's converts. The convert mind, I don't know. Let's see if you're open to this idea. Here's my idea. It's not my idea. It's an idea, but I definitely use it in the podcast. Is that you, like me, this isn't about you. This is about people who went from something to something else. We were always worshiping God. You weren't not religious. You were religious. I was religious. The God was the highest good. And then what you did is you just changed gods. This is a very pagan, this pre-Christian, really old, ancient way of knowing. So for instance, even if you go to Africa with me now, which I hope you will, we talk about it and stuff, some cruel trip we could do together to where we work. But even in the old world right now, people, they kind of want to know your language and your God. And I wonder if this resonates with you, that you actually were religious and then you became a follower of a different good or a different God. Would you say that or not really? Does that not feel right to you?
I mean, I guess anyone has to be religious if you take it at like the basis being like having a highest good that you serve. We could go to who is the uninteresting influence of mine, Bob Dylan, who has that beautiful song, "You're going to have to serve somebody." Right?
Exactly.
So you're going to have to serve somebody. So I guess, yes, I guess I would say, yes, I agree with you. But at the same time, I think I was in a place, there's a very big difference in knowing that you serve something and not knowing it. And thinking that you're just a free thinking modern person living in material comfort. And I think actually the thought at that time for me is that I was very evolved and much wiser than any religious people because I didn't need that and I didn't serve somebody. So, but of course, on some level, I was, and I was immeasurably more foolish than they were because I was blind to even know.
Yeah.
Like you and me are talking right now, and I'm saying to anyone of faith or not of faith, like, the things that I believe religiously, I believe them on faith. I'm taking a leap of faith. I know I can't prove it, man. You know what I mean? And even if I could prove it, that's not why I believe it in a strange way. You know,
I can't prove it, man. I love that because it really is just it's not a complicated concept. I can't prove this shit, man. Like, it's not like what you think. I'm not over here in liturgy or in mass because I can prove something. That's not what's happening.
And what's interesting, John, I think that even if you could in some way, like quote unquote, scientifically prove all this stuff, it wouldn't make a difference to the people whose hearts are hard to it. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't, I don't think that's how any of this works. It's a matter of the heart.
So what happened to your music? Can you feel something palpable in it after conversion or not really? Maybe you were already writing Christian, Catholic?
Well, I have 3 kids now, so I've not been writing that much music. I've just been changing diapers and
that's a good point. That's a good point.
But it actually made me realize that so much of my music that I wrote pre my conversion, it turned out that I'd been on this road for a very long time, and I was working it out kind of subconsciously through writing about it. So it's less that my writing changed or the content of it changed, and it's more that I now look at my older work in a totally new way and realize that I've been writing about things that I was going to know explicitly later on, that I was just only kind of touching on the kind of subconscious level earlier.
When I met you, so we met through our friend Greg, and Greg is also fabulous, like a crazy guitar
player and songwriter. Yeah.
Songwriter, and amazing guy. I have a question about something that he enlightened me to, but go back when I was like, Joe Pug, oh, I love this guy. And I started looking around at your music. I thought a lot of your stuff was post-conversion because I knew you as a man having made a conversion. Then I realized, no, this stuff's from before. So, and I've always sensed that there, even in the secular world, let's just call it the secular music biz, whatever that is. Haven't you always noticed that there's cats within that situation that are already writing Christian music, and it's not gospel Protestant on the altar Christian, on the stage Christian music? Isn't that weird? What is that?
Well, I mean, it's the greatest story ever told. So, if you're a storyteller worth your salt at all, of course you're going to touch on it in some way. Again, I don't think the stuff that I was writing was explicitly this before. I think I was just very touched by the story in a way that I wouldn't fully comprehend until years later. So, it's, the good artists borrow, great artists steal type of deal. I borrowed as much as I could because it's just on its face, believe it or not, it's an amazing story. It's the most amazing story.
Yeah.
Betrayed by a kiss. I mean, come on, man.
And by the way, and it's also sort of like, if we can make a DNA analogy, the story is just in us. And I know people will go, no, bro, you're in a Christian culture, even if it's collapsing a little bit, you're still imbibing all this Christian stuff from the Protestant past. As a Christian, as an Orthodox guy anyway, I don't know what you think about this. That's not the way we get a little arrogant. The Orthodox are like, no. If the God that I'm talking about is true and Christ is resurrected and then all people, have it, this is affecting everyone, then no, the DNA of the story is actually in a Myanmar Buddhist. Like he's just doing Buddhist stuff. And often that story is reflective of the Christian story. And sometimes it might not be, but it's still, I would just say it's in the DNA of every human who breathes air and walks around. Is that too presumptuous for you? What do you think about that?
I don't, I've never, and maybe this speaks to me being incurious, I don't know, but I don't know too much about other religions. Like I never, maybe I took a comparative religion course in college that I slept through or I was hungover through it. I don't know, one of the two, probably hungover.
I don't know what you're talking about. That seems weird. I've never done anything like that.
My body is a temple. I don't know enough about other religions to comment on how similar it is to my experience. This just feels very true to me, whether it's because I, grew up culturally in the West, like predisposed to this. I think I do agree with you on a certain level. I think it goes much deeper than that, but there's probably some cultural artifacts to it as well.
Sure. How, you're doing less on the road now. You're writing fewer, you write less and everything. But how have you been received? If people are like, wait, Joe? Joe's a Christian guy, or Joe, is he writing Jesus songs? Like, what happens now with your musician friends?
I don't know. I don't bring it up and put it up in everyone's face. I know that it's an evangelical religion, of course, but I also, I was not Christian for a lot longer than I have been. And I know how my heart would have worked if someone was not a thing for 37 years and then was a thing for the last 3 years and they wanted to talk to me about it in the same way. And I'm not meaning to denigrate the religious aspect of it at all, but it'd be the same reason that I wouldn't want to listen to someone who just started doing CrossFit or something like that. It's like, all right, man, I don't know. So, but definitely I've been on the road with some musicians who, it'll be Saturday morning. They'll want to get a jump and I'll be like, I'm going to go to mass really quick, and not to put it in their face, just because that's what I'm about to do. And then they'll ask me questions about it afterwards, and we'll talk. And, it wouldn't be ultimately me that did the work. It'd be the big guy that did the work. I'm not going to, but I will sit there and talk to anyone who wants to talk about it. But again, I don't want to be the CrossFit guy. You know what I mean? It's just like, I found this new cool thing. Come follow me. It feels like a little hucksterish to me. You know what I mean?
But there's beauty. That's a type of humility. Yeah. You're applying a humility, which again, I'm thinking of my friend, Uncle Seth, who's my dearest friend, but he's also like super secular guy. Uh-huh. He would be, you guys are just talking about how life works. Like he would say the same. He's also a musician. And I would love to have you guys sit down and talk music, but yeah, he like, what he does is when I'll say me, when I categorize something as, let's call it Christian, he's going, you're just everybody does that, man. You just want me to believe that Jesus was dead and then alive. And I'm not doing that, because it kind of like you said, he's like, it's not rational. So when I try to explain that this story, like is integrating itself and has and always will into every aspect of creation, and you're living within that. He's like, that's really poetic. That's really poetic. Also, no. He's just like, I don't have to live in that world that you're trying to create for me. And so what I love what you just said is that's what I do too. If I'm hanging out with Seth, I'm like, well, I'm going to Vespers. Mm-hmm. He just has to sort that, at that point. Like, and the cool part is people who love you will sort what you love. Yeah. People want to be around you because, I don't know, you make them happy. They won't sort what you love, because at that point, they just want the happiness of having shared the thing, that makes them happy. And I always think about that with like mismatched. I have a friend who got married, and he married, not both of them were not Christian, not Orthodox. And then he became Orthodox and she didn't. Wow. Now you got this uneven yoke thing. And I always think, so he would call me they had problems, and he would call me. It's very interesting. And I would just be like, yeah, man, just light your incense. And there's this cool conversation is the incense then wafts around the house. And then what it does is it forces the other spouse to kind of have to deal with the smell. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And then at that point, I mean, your partner just lit some incense. He's not calling you out. He's doing his thing. And then it gets really interesting. Like, how will I live with his thing? And then eventually you get down to the deep stuff eventually, and you don't have to attack somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also to that example of your friend there, I mean, presumably he's not lighting the incense at random and unexpected times. He's lighting them at like a liturgical pace.
That's right.
And that builds up over time. I'm in an interesting place with that now, where, I was baptized 3.5 years ago. The first year of, going to mass is very emotional every time, because this is a new thing for me. And now I'm in a place where, just like everything else in life, you kind of get used to it. And, but I'm not yearning for that earlier, more intense time. I really enjoy this. I just really enjoy, this is what I go do once a week, or maybe there's another day of obligation where I'm there this week, but this is what I do, and do it every week. It happens while life is going on. while there's bills to pay, while the house is completely messed up, while a kid has COVID. What, you know what I mean? It's just, it's life, man. And it's just a part of it. And I enjoy this kind of completely unspectacular part of it more than anything.
Guys, we're getting right back to Joe in a second. But I would like you to consider joining us in the field. 2 spots currently available. That's 2 years, 2 people going to East Africa. Mozambique likely. Possibly South Africa. But I don't want you to think of this as an offer to a place. I want you to think of it as an offer to a metanoia, to a change. This is an offering. This is an invitation to doing something like changing your reality. Deep cultural immersion, and then loving your neighbors and assisting them in their own projects, not your own projects, their work. That assistance it's off the charts for doing something beautiful in the world and in your own life. Sorry, it just is. I'm not even embarrassed anymore. So, above all, I want good people to think about ways to go off and do beautiful things. Write Adrian Perez at first-things.org, but you can find it on our website, www.first-things.org. Go there right now. Become a field worker. So let's talk about the monastic inclination. You Catholic guys have monastics, you have monks, you have nuns.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're the ones that said, but I don't even want to pay bills either, or even worry about my wife or my husband's, needs. I want to go all in. Do you think that's what those cats are? That's what I think.
Yeah. And I think you have to be a certain type of almost spiritual athlete to, like, they're the ones that went pro. You know what I mean? But
that's interesting.
Yes, because but none of us are really gonna. My son loves baseball. He's not going pro, but hopefully he'll be teaching his son baseball, my grandson baseball, 30 years from now.
Right. It's happening on many layers and levels.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true. Almost the love of the thing is what's important in your family setting or in my family setting. I like what you said. It really helped me. For a long time, my wife and I struggled with that, which is, we just said our morning prayer and that's it. Like, there's a whole Christian life because we have, like you guys, we have 5 times a prayer, 5 hours, the first hour, the second hour. There's all these extra things. They're not extra though. There's all these things you can be doing on any given day. Some of the monastics and some people in culture they say the Jesus prayer all the time. It's like I'm going to my car. And we early on were really drawn to that, especially my wife. But it broke down. A guilt thing started to happen about three years into our marriage, where her activities were guilting me or my activities were guilting her. We weren't doing enough. It was a bit of a crisis. We had to sort it out. And you know how we got it fixed, brother? You know how we got it fixed? We, in all of this zeal, became missionaries is the right word, but mostly we went to Haiti to help with a school and live for two years. And all of that zeal got burned off in the reality of just Haitian culture. For me, I became aware that I couldn't get stuff done. That that my 3 extra prayer, that the book I would write in Creole to help everyone become Orthodox, these things, they weren't the active enzyme. It was like love, and I didn't have enough of that.
And works, yeah.
Yeah, and just
what you were doing there at the time.
That's right, and just getting in there quietly and just and when I came back, I would say I was a more, quote, liberal Orthodox. That's not the right word, but the more at peace and also probably less nervous or something about what I didn't yet do. Does any of this resonate with you as a new Catholic? Are you feeling? Do you feel it?
Yeah, I mean, I've never even gone in that deep. Like I'm the guy that gets, every month I get a book. I'm subscribed to a book that comes and it's like the liturgy of the hours for this month. And every month for the last 3 years, I've generally made the decision to look at that as it comes in the mail and say to myself, cool, but it's Monday. I'm just going to drink some beer tonight after dinner. Like that's me. That's my own little personal hell that I live in, that I just gave you a nice little slice of there. You're welcome.
Well, I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I guess from my perspective, I'm just taking it one step at a time. And this is such a radical change for me to go from nothing to something that we'll see where it goes from here.
How's your family's hip?
My family's great.
They're on the ride with you as a new.
My nuclear family is, and then my folks and my sister, who I'm very close with, they're not, but they're very, very supportive of me. My sister will send her daughter, my niece, with us to mass sometimes because she wants her to be around that. And I got the best family, man. The best.
Well, this is where. What else after that? You can sleep pretty easily. Here's a question. Goes back to our buddy Greg, who teaches theology at a Catholic school in Chippewa Falls. And he's pretty good at it. Well, he's just got more energy than my whole neighborhood put together times 10.
Energy, yeah.
He lies. But he and I talk, and I think you're in this conversation every now and then. There's something happening in culture. There's something going on where maybe not the highest, nerdiest theological conversations, but something about God or something about true meaning or not. I'm not talking about you can be saved, not that one, but like, why am I here? What's this about? Give us a report from the edge in the Catholic world, because a lot of these cats that listen to me are Orthodox or adjacent. Is this happening with you guys? Is this a thing in Catholicism?
Yeah, I mean, look, the dominant part of most congregations in Catholicism, at least the ones I've been to, it still remains, people, let's say over 60, and then huge, like Spanish-speaking congregations who are younger for sure, but they're first-generation Americans, and their faith has not been eroded by very comfortable material American culture over several generations. So they're all still in. And that's great. But I think you are starting to notice, because I go, as I'm traveling on the road, I play 50 or 60 shows a year. So I'm on the road 75 days a year. I go to a dozen different churches around the country. Shout out to the app Mass Finder. Go to the...
Oh, yeah? Mass Finder. I love Mass Finder.
Yeah, I'll wake up in some, crappy little courtyard motel and just plug it in there, and I'll go to a spot. To get to your point here, not to be too circuitous here, but I'll end up at different parishes. And yes, like, you're definitely starting to notice younger families coming in at a higher clip that are turning on to something. And it's something that you absolutely would have seen 60 years ago, but that I don't think you would have seen 15 to 20 years ago.
Interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That does.
There was kind of a blip in time there, let's say for about 30 or 40 years, but I think that's starting to reverse itself. How fast that goes, who knows, man? Like, maybe it fizzles out, or maybe it takes a long time, or I don't know. You see how fast things can happen in culture. Like, maybe there's a catalyzing event and it happens. And when it happens, you have this cascade of people getting interested in something, that it can kind of have like almost like a hockey stick, like graphic.
Yeah, that's right.
Like really quickly. So who knows?
It feels that way to me. You're seeing it when you travel all these hours traveling in these parishes. I'm seeing it with our restaurant. There's just such an open willingness for us to do these toasts that are always right on the edge of. But there's this thing, though. I want to make this really clear to people. There's the pearls idea. So here's what I mean. You've been to Supras. In fact, we had a great one. There was a really nice one.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, fantastic. I'll just say this. If you watch, and I want you to comment on this, because I could be just gaslighting myself. Okay, that's very possible. There really is an attempt by the Talmud not to become a priest or preacher.
100%.
You see it, right? At least I'm trying.
Yeah, like when I came back, I was talking to my family about it. My folks who are not religious, they were like, "How was it? Was it cool?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're going to try and do one in this area coming up." And I was like, "You guys should come." They were like, "Well, I thought it was like a Catholic thing." It's like, no, it maybe kind of. All I know is I know you guys like I know the back of my hand, and I know these supras, and I know that you would not only not feel uncomfortable at it, but that you'd love it. Absolutely.
But I think it's because, and this comes right from Tamada's in Georgia. It's because the Tamada is trying to ascend to the thing that's at the table that binds us. So one of the things Christians have not done well, and I'll blame everybody who's ever, is walk up to people and start with the pearls. Like, Joe, have you accepted Jesus into your heart as your personal savior? Like, that's like a deep, profound pearl, okay? That you better be clear on, like, who are you relating to? Not because they're bad or good. It's because, I mean, they don't walk up to you and say, "Do you love my grandfather who saved me from the pond when I was young?" You'll be like, he sounds great. Like, I don't know. And so I think my point is that one of the things I've noticed is the groundswell of people willing to speak about things religious is in part, in my world anyway, is a reaction to the idea that the religious, quote, religious things aren't being foisted on them. It's actually, it's an invite through the portal of something like humanity.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know who has a really good analogy for this, and he has really good analogies for most things, is Bishop Robert Barron, who played a huge part in evangelizing me in his all the stuff he has out on YouTube. But he has this description of exactly what you're talking about. It's like, okay, you have an 8-year-old son and you want to get him into baseball. So for me, I take my 8-year-old son, we go to Oriole Park at Camden Yards, we drive up the parkway, we get there, we go in, we get in our seats, and Barron would say, "Okay, is what you now do is you sit for the next half hour and you talk over the game, and over the game you're saying, let's start with the infield fly rule." You know what I mean? And no, like what you do is you sit there in this man's and you let your 8-year-old son watch Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, like golden god, making these web gems. And then 6 months later, when he's playing Little League, your son's going to sit down and ask you to explain the infield fly rule to him. You know what I mean? Like that. And that is not my analogy. As I mentioned before, that beautiful analogy is Bishop Barron's, but that I think gets at the heart of what you're talking about.
This is, there in the Orthodox web world or whatever we're calling it, there's this same, what you've described is exactly the description of maybe just read some stuff about the lives of the saints, because what you're actually doing is entering in an everyday life, because the saints aren't far away. They're actually just like Joe. Like, it's weird. They have skin like you and like a forehead like me, or maybe not like my forehead. It's a big forehead, but you get the point. They share. Christ shares too, but the thing is you got to watch out, because he's fully God, fully man. Like, wait, okay, I'm just going to stick with the guy, the Greek saint who was sort of born to a poor mother, and then he learned this, And I like what you're saying, because that's what's happening.
If that portal that you're talking about, if anyone is listening now and they're not religious, but they're curious about it, and particularly if they're American, I think one of the accounts of the lives of the saints that could be really good for them is Mark Twain wrote an account of Joan of Arc. I don't know if you know this or not, but
No.
I didn't until I read it. Just Google Mark Twain, Joan of Arc. It's now put together as a small novella, but it was originally serialized in Harper's Magazine, 150 years ago. And you get to read about the life of Joan of Arc, but Mark Twain wrote it. So it flies off the page. You don't put it down. So that would be an example of watching Gunnar Henderson at shortstop rather than
it's the access, right? Yes. It's the access comes through. Mm-hmm. Mark Twain wrote. All right, let's go over this.
Oh yeah, here I'm going to look up the name because this is important. anyone listening.
For my friends listening to this, they're going to be like, wait a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
Huckleberry Finn wrote about.
So it's called Personal Reflections of Joan of Arc, because the narrator, it's written from the perspective of Joan of Arc's basically secretary, who's her childhood friend. So because he was her childhood friend and then later on went on to be her secretary, he's able to, from his perspective, tell all these like childhood stories of her and then all the way through her martyrdom. Yeah. And what's really cool about it is there's all these wonderful descriptions, like these very heroic descriptions of battle, just very detailed and human descriptions of political corruption, of common people that refuse to be corrupted.
And you read that coming in as a convert?
I read that last year. No, but I'm just saying, like, to your,
but it's beating you. Yeah.
To your point, like that would be a great one to read. And that would be like a heroic view of Christianity.
Well, my brother, who's an Orthodox priest, this is really, if you had to just sum it up in a lot of ways, he's like, hey, knock it off. You pretty much find all the answers in the lives of the saints. And then from there, you'll sort of go backwards into the depths of the mysteries of the liturgy and everything else. And I fully understand that. Here's the problem, Joe, because me and you both, I don't fully do it. This is because, we like what we like. This is one of the problems. We've inherited a desire. And man, breaking the habits are hard.
Yeah, you're telling me, John. Yeah. I mean, I'm a real slave to a lot of that stuff. I like beer. I like cigars.
Yeah.
I like to spend time thinking about myself. I should be so what are you going to do?
One way to think about it, and then I want to ask you about the podcast, because I just find it interesting. Plus, I think people want to hear about it too, because it's a really good podcast, and I bet a lot of people who are tuning in know about it. So before I do, though, okay, here's, I don't know if you sit well with this. Again, I'm going to do sports analogy.
Yeah.
So we can do baseball. We can do baseball.
Great.
9 guys. Gunnar Henderson's, by the way, I'm an Oriole fan, as you know, and he's going to be an all-time great. You got, Colton Cowser is another one. You got guys who are just, they shoot off the television screen, and okay, Saints, got it. But have you ever just gone like this? I think I'm just like a utility player. Oh, there he is. He might pinch hit today. Maybe he'll be good at pinch hitting. He'll probably go back down to AAA at some point, but he's on the team. Some days this makes me feel very happy that I can maybe even kind of be that cat. Like, what do you think about that?
I'm the 55-year-old washed up hitting coach that drinks too much, who's always being threatened by the Angeles family to be fired the next day, but I'm still part of the organization, but that's much closer to what I am. But
damn it.
I wish I could just be set down to the Bay Sox if that was the worst thing that happened.
Bay Sox. He knows his Orioles, guys. That's the minor league team. That's great. I almost put an Oriole hat on today. All right. Do this for me. This is one of your great loves and is the podcast. Like, you get to talk to a lot of incredible singer-songwriters. What got this started for you? How did you get involved in that biz?
Well, I started the podcast relatively cynically about 10 years ago because it's really hard to get people to listen to your music these days. Anyone knows this or is aware of this. Frankly, at this point, it's hard to get anyone to pay attention to any project because culture has been so splintered. But I found it really hard to get people to listen to the music, and I needed a way to get it through to people. And also, I'd spent all this time and money early on. You hire publicists and stuff like that to get you on other people's media projects, and they're very expensive. And usually the publicist comes back to you and says, yep, we talked to that person. They love the music. They're very interested. They can't make it happen right now, but they love the work. Anyway, here's my invoice for the last 3 months.
Ouch.
And so I just thought, well, I'm done asking other people if I can be a part of their thing. I'm just going to make my own thing. How about that? And so it started as a monthly show where I interviewed other songwriters. It's called the Working Songwriter. Now it's weekly. And yeah, I just interview other songwriters. Generally, it's people whose music I really love. I mean, now that we're about 300 episodes deep, we're at a point where someone books it and they vouch for the person that comes on. I'm not always super familiar with all of the people that are coming on, but anyone that comes on has been in the game for a while and has something interesting to say about the artistic side of it and about the business side of it as well.
Generalize is the wrong word. Maybe help us categorize as non-artists in that way. Is there something that unites all these guys that stands out as sort of makes them good at their job? Is there something about all these folks, or not really?
The thing that makes people, in my opinion, and what I've noticed from talking to all these folks, that is similar with them, in some sense, anyone can kind of have a one-hit wonder type of deal. To use a golf analogy, it's like anyone, no matter how bad you are at golf, there's a chance that you could hit a hole in one, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a chance that you could write, from that Tom Hanks movie, there's a chance you could write That Thing You Do, you know what I mean? Or be a one-hit wonder. What really unites people who I'd say are artists and do it over the course of a career, even if they never reach again like that zenith of that first hit that they had, it's that they stay interested. They take it upon themselves as the most important part of their job is to stay continually falling in love with it by learning new things. I wouldn't even couch that in kind of like the modern bro language of like, you always got to be pushing yourself. You always got to be getting better. Like It's not a self-improvement project. It's much more along the lines of, I find this really interesting. And when I don't find it interesting anymore, my whole job is now to find a new way to find, like I've been playing guitar for 30 years and I still, if I hit a patch where I'm not inspired about things, I take guitar lessons. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to learn chords. I can play the hour and a half show that I play. I can do that. It's fine. I just need, I need to find a new chord or a new way of phrasing a chord or a new way of thinking about how to make melody and counter melody. I need to be learning that stuff so that I continue to want to do it, and I think that's what unites most people who are, I'd say artists of note is that they continually find new ways to be inspired. And that's what they consider the job.
And do you find that community, are they likable people? Would you want them around a table as super? Are they fun? Or
I think it tracks with the general population.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think, I just don't think that there's any, I've never been you have to consider the artist how do I rephrase this? I always consider the art itself and not the artist as well. There's really, really interesting art that are the dullest people that you've ever met. And there are people who make absolutely abhorrent songs who are the raddest dudes or chicks you've ever hung out with in your life. It just doesn't really track. In some weird way, those two things aren't related to one.
That makes sense. I find that the kind of paradox makes sense in life too, where you're like, it feels like it feels like those three married couples all have this really thing going for them. But when you open the black box, if you can even get in there, you start to realize, no, man, the human spirit is beyond us in a lot of ways. You can't, the scientific, sort of the last 400 years of the Enlightenment have really tried to categorize, mathematicize, cauterize, put everything in a perfectly contained box, including sort of the human psyche. But I like that we can't figure that out. And that makes sense to me, what you're saying about singer-songwriters. You know what I'd love for you to do that we did not talk about before?
What's that?
Can you just sing something right there? Is that a hassle? Do you have your guitar?
Yeah, I'm in my studio, man. I could absolutely do that for you. Hold on.
Would you do that for us?
Yes, hold on.
Are you mad at me? I threw you under the bus like this?
No, man, I'm right. I'd love to. Always love playing tunes. And I'm right here next to all my fancy microphones. This is also where I make albums. So all the microphones are here.
So it's not a disaster for the sound, yeah.
No, I switched to, I invested money. It doesn't take a lot of money these days to have a good studio setup at home. And we'll get the sound going.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, here we go. This is a song off a record I made 5 years ago now. So we found you in the street with a list of all our names. There were stars beside the strongest and the weakest. They cut you quite a deal, almost too good to refuse. But some of us don't just worship what's convenient. We thought that our distance was safe, but wickedness can travel. You are not fragile. You are not fragile. You are not fragile. And your father, rest his soul, the finest man I ever knew, spoke a truth that was clean as an island. They gave him every chance to repeat the party line, but he shattered the windows with his silence. So they took him out back in the rain, and they made him an example. But you are not fragile. You are not fragile. You are not fragile. Now they're rounding up the boys in the nation of the war, and they left behind the two-faced and the useless. On the first of every month, the neighbors gather on our lawn, and we dance for their mercy like we're minstrels. They've dug up the headstones last night and broke them into gravel. But you are not fragile. 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 You are not fragile.
Yeah. You just made my day, man. And I'll tell you what, I don't come easy to this genre, but I just love when you sing, man.
Thank you.
When you play. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is fantastic. So here's what we'll do. We're going to try to put together this table with Bishop Barron in Chicago, this Supra. And
we'll
try to come out
as crew and see. We'll see.
No, we don't know. We don't know. But I know that you know those folks at Word on Fire where he sort of has his media company, and we'll do something, but we'll also come out to Baltimore. I'll come out and I'll try to bring my wife, and we'll do like a Friends thing where we have Supra with your people.
We'll base it around an Orioles game. That's the play.
Yeah, that's the play.
That's the play, right? I thought you were a Yankees fan.
No, man. I'm from New York, but here's what happened. When I was little, my dad took me to a Yankees game with the Orioles.
That's right.
And I'm that guy who was like, well, all these people like the Yankees. I don't like those kids. And then...
Well, it's a cool logo for a kid, too. The bird, the cartoon bird logo. Kids like that.
That was 100%. Yeah. 100% what happened to me, too. I'm like, cool logo. And also, Eddie Murray was my favorite player coming up.
Nice,
my very favorite player.
Of course.
So... I love you, man. Thank you for. I'm going to use you as my sort of like musical, cultural, sort of Catholic attaché at times. We'll figure out life. Okay.
Please, anytime. I'm here to answer the call. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on. Joe Pug, guys. Guys, coming up, we're doing a pod. Well, I'm doing a solo pod. People are like, solo pods suck, bro. I don't really think they do, actually. There's some of my favorite things in the world when I sit down and write a little essay and they go into 3 parts. We're coming up on one called The Pet Mafia. Look for that coming out soon. Old world, new world. Why do people have pets the way we have pets now? That's a hell of a question. It gets pretty wacky. Yeah. Pet strollers. Doggers. Yeah, something to be said about that, and we're going to use the old world to understand it. Why not? I got another one. Well, we'll talk more. Keep tuning in. Who loves you? Thanks for supporting First Things by supporting our podcast. Now go over to our website. And over there, you're going to find all the stories of all the work we do. We being men and women that go into the field and spend 2 years. Go. First Things, right? I'm pointing. Go. First Things. Come to one of our fundraisers, Art of the Automata. Come to our restaurant. Go to the FTF Field School. That's coming out right now. Go and get a SDS, Supra Dinner Society. Book a Supra by bringing automata to your location, to your business. And then have a Supra with your business. Why wouldn't you do that? Businesses need to be together. They don't even know how to be together. I should tell you a horrible story about a conference I went to. Oh my God. Let me just put it like this. The people sat in seats, watched people give lectures for 4 hours, turned around at lunch, went and got back and got a box, went back and then got back in the same seats, ate their box lunch alone, threw it out, and then they started the second half of the conference. That's what they did for lunch. What if they had had a Supra? First of all, everyone would have wanted to be there. Number two is you do a 3-hour Supra, cut out some of the yammer, and what you get now is a total 100% deep dive into what it means to be with these people, and that makes the stuff they're saying a lot more interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just given you a perfect business model. Do not steal it. The Supra Dinner Society. Do it! Call us, call them. It's Daniel and David running one of our offshoots of life here at First Things. Love ya. By the way, one day I'll tell you what my hat means.